Stones.
Yes.
I remember.
Come on.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious.
And here we are, together again, Sam Newman, Don Scott. My name's Fiona Byrne. I'm sitting in today and working with Sam and Don, and it's an absolute delight to welcome our guest, Di Rolle, to the podcast today. Di,
Thank you.
You are one of Melbourne's great publicists. You've been part of the movie, the rock and roll, the entertainment scene here in Melbourne for
a long time.
A long time. And you've worked with everyone. You've worked with the absolute biggest names from, well, actually you have a great story to tell with the Beatles.
Yeah,
You've worked with the Rolling Stones. You've worked with David Bowie. You've worked with spectacular people, and of course there is a marvellous Michael Jackson moment in your life as well.
Yes, there is.
We're so glad to welcome you here today. And
Thank you, Fiona.
Don Scott in particular is thrilled to see you.
Well, I don't remember Di Rolle, but I remember Diane Rolle.
Yeah.
Diane Rolle from Wimmera Street,
Yes.
Box Hill,
Yes.
who we happen to be in the same grade at primary school. Box Hill North State School, 4717 was the
Yes.
school number.
Diane.
And Diane graduated and went to the roughest girls' school around called Box Hill Tech. Later had its name changed to Whitehorse College.
Whitehorse Ladies College.
Oh,
it became.
Ladies' College.
Yeah, so I went Box Hill Girls Tech, and my parents sent me there so that I could learn to make shirts for my future husband, learn to cook, learn to garden, and I never married, and so I never did any of those things. I went off and worked in rock and roll.
Well, I remember you well, Di. We've been in there. You've probably belted us round the ears over the journey, which is how it should be. And this is a fantastic guest, Fiona. I wasn't going to come in today because I wasn't sure how I was travelling.
You couldn't lose control.
I'm not in control. I'm just in here, part of it.
Oh,
Phoebe's in control, and it's great to have you in here. So rather than worrying about what school she went to and how rough the school she was at, Don, she could tell us. She, the cat's mother, she could tell us.
Di?
Well, I'm just said she.
Actually, it's a big week. How long is it?
She could tell us
Just hold
exactly
on,
the
Johnny.
people that she's come across, Don, rather than the nonsense you're carrying on with.
Well, it happens in threes. Now, Diane, what's it, 60, 70 years since I've seen you?
Oh, it's not that long.
Well, it was. We're in primary school.
Yeah, but we've bumped into each other at various
Have we?
functions.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, if I
You're
would have, I remembered. But it was also a marked week last week. I was sitting down enjoying my meal at a bakery in Mount Martha, and a lady came up to me and stood in front of and she said, "Hello, Don." I looked at her. Who was this lady? It took me a little while. She said, "Hello, Don," again. It turned out to be my first wife. I haven't spoken to her for 50 years.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
You didn't even recognise
And you didn't
her.
recognise
Well,
her.
how
That's
could you?
sad.
People change, Diane.
They certainly do.
Over 50 and 70 years, Don.
Yeah, they do.
Now, Di, tell us, what was Don like? Dare I ask, what on earth was... We know what Don's like at the moment.
Well,
What was Don
he
like?
had a really lovely brother, Warwick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they were very well behaved boys. Very well behaved, and you played football, and I always remember you, the girls liked you.
Well behaved, that would be a euphemism for boring.
No, it wasn't boring. It was a bit serious,
Clinical and austere and
but nice.
beige.
And the girls liked him, I remember. We all wanted to
When
run
he had
away.
that shock.
Well, I wish you'd told me because I was a little bit in awe of you ladies. There was only two girls that I was comfortable talking to. One was Diane Rolle and the other was Carol Gunnell.
Oh, my
Do
God.
you remember Carol Gunnell?
I remember the name. I
Yeah,
don't
their
remember
name. She was a tall girl.
Did you trip any of them up, Don?
Beg your pardon?
Did you trip any of them up?
No, I didn't, Johnny.
No.
He was too shy.
That's
he was
right.
a good footballer, though. He was destined to become a star.
Oh, yes, and now
He
he
was.
shies away from it, so much so that he's cancelled
Very
his
shy.
investiture to the being a legend at Hawthorn when
Now,
he's asked he's going horse
Di,
riding instead.
Listen, now we're going back a bit. Now, early in the mid-'60s, your name, when we left school, I went to Blackburn High School, but your name surfaced when the Beatles came
Yes.
out. Now, hang on. Is it true you were secretary or president of the Beatles
Yeah.
fan club?
I was a secretary of the Beatles fan club. I was 16 at the time. I was so young. And I met them.
Did you, what, in 64?
I met them when they came here to Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I can still remember John Lennon. His presence was extraordinary, and I remember him standing next to me. I remember it vividly, and I remember George Harrison being so beautiful and Paul McCartney looking like an angel. Ringo wasn't there because he'd had a kidney out or something.
That's right. He didn't travel to Australia, did he?
He did. No, he did.
He but he came in late.
He came in late. He performed at Festival Hall.
Yeah, he did. Oh, my God, that was so fantastic.
Yeah.
West Melbourne Stadium,
That's
I think
right.
it was
Yes,
called
it
then.
was.
I went to it. Never heard a note they sang.
No, it was very
I
I
difficult.
thought Sounds Incorporated, the
They were
opening act, were
great.
better
They were
than the
great.
Beatles.
Well, I
Sounds
couldn't hear the
Incorporated.
Beatles. Couldn't hear them.
Well, the Beatles were only on stage for about 15 minutes. That
Is
was
that
as
all?
long as they played. Yeah. But I've got to tell you that one of the greatest rock and roll songs was played that night by Paul McCartney when he sang Long Tall Sally.
I was just
and
going to say Long Tall Sally.
Yeah. I mean, Paul McCartney, I want to talk about him a lot, but Paul McCartney singing Long Tall Sally is one of the greatest songs and the performances you'll ever hear. He's just such a genius.
What did you do as secretary of the
I just
Beatles
answered
fan?
mail. People going crazy about. I'm going to feel quite silly now because I'm quite grown up and a bit more sophisticated than I
Well,
was
there's a
when I
claim
was
to fame
16.
back then.
So, Di, tell us, how did you meet them? Because this was every
Girl's
male
dream.
and female's
Yeah.
dream
Well,
when
we
they
were
visited in
running a fan
1964.
club, and of course, it was a huge business way back then. When I look back, it was really run by Neil Aspinall, who worked with the guys in London, and all the fan clubs got to meet them because it was serious. You were spreading the word, you were helping spread the word, and it's incredible that I ended up being a publicist because that's what I was doing then. But it was a wonderful privilege, and I'll never forget it, and it's a very special thing that happened in my life.
And it's quite marvellous sitting here because, Sam, you went to their Melbourne concert, the
Yeah.
Beatles Melbourne concert. Don, were you there as well?
Yeah, I went there.
And Di, you were there as
Yeah.
well? So
Incredible.
it feels like, I know that it was at the West Melbourne Stadium or Festival
Yes.
Hall, but it feels like half of Melbourne was there
Yeah.
by the number of people who
Yeah.
recalled
The Flies were the opening act.
Oh my God. This is
I
going.
think Ronnie Burns played in the
Ronnie
Flies,
Burns
didn't
was
he?
in the Flies. This is
And
going
they,
so
they,
far back.
they weren't.
Yeah.
Is that the Flies?
No, that's Paul
I
McCartney.
know.
This is Paul McCartney, Long Tall Sally.
And he played left-handed guitar.
This is at Festival Hall.
Yep.
Really?
There we are. So we're
Fantastic. God, he's marvellous. He makes my
and still doing
everything.
it at 80.
Yeah,
still
81
wandering around.
at
Yep.
Glastonbury.
Extraordinary.
Genius.
Yeah, they put him up against Joe Biden, who has to read everything saying, "This is my name, I'm Joe Biden, the President of the United States." Then they showed Paul McCartney playing and talking and
Yeah.
dancing. And
He did a
showed-
3-hour show at Glastonbury.
He's extraordinary.
Unbelievable.
And he brought Dave Grohl on, who is another great rock artist. I've met him too. Very, very charismatic, Dave Grohl. Have you met Dave Grohl?
I didn't realise they only played for 15 minutes at Festival
15
Hall. I
minutes.
was there. Why is
I
that?
thought it went longer than
I'm
that.
sure surely it
20
went longer than
minutes.
that.
It wasn't that much
Not-
What was the name of the Jim Nicol, wasn't it? The stand-in,
Jimmy Nicol. Gee, you've got a
stand-in
good-
drummer.
Yeah,
Jimmy
the stand-in
Nicol.
drummer.
Di, publicity wasn't a thing when you left school.
No.
So going from Box Hill Ladies Technical School,
Yeah.
what did you do
Well-
and how did you get into publicity?
My father wanted me to work in the bank because Dad was in the bank.
yep.
And you did what your dad did.
Yeah, I
you
know.
did what your dad said, and I
Yep.
never did any of that. I couldn't work in the bank because I failed at maths. So I got a job at the Box Hill Hospital, and I started out as like a little trainee nurse, and I hated every minute of it. And I read an article in the paper about Channel O being built. The bricks were being laid for Channel O.
At East Berwick, in East
In
Berwick.
East Berwick. And I wrote a letter to Channel O. I just went,
Really?
Channel O, I'm Di Rolle and I want to come work in television. And a lovely man by the name of Paul Britnell rang me up one night. My father, I don't know if you remember my father, he had a very important voice. And he said, "Diane, there's a Paul Britnell on the phone for you." And I went, "Oh." And I went, and it was Paul Britnell, and he offered me a job at Channel O.
Doing what?
Oh, I was filing 16mm commercials in the film library. Now, that's a long time ago. That was my
So
first.
what did you do? Work your way through production or get into production
Yeah, I got
or something?
into production. I became a director's assistant. I was incredibly ambitious. All I wanted to do was work with famous people. I didn't want to get married. Didn't want to do any of that. I just wanted to be around famous people. And I wanted to do that since I was a little girl, really.
Did you go out with any of the famous people? No.
God.
Come on, give us a list of who are those people that those...
I can't do that.
Can't
Why
you?
not?
Di has a kiss and
He
tell.
asked Miss World this, and she was very. She batted him back down the pitch.
I'm not asking who
You were asking Miss World. That's what you'll lead to
I'm
next.
not asking
Yeah, I
Di
didn't go
who
out
she
with Miss World.
bedded down, if anyone. I'm asking
No.
who she might have gone out with. Or
Oh, I went out with lots of people.
come on.
I
Well,
went
she
out with
interpreted
Mark
Betty.
Knopfler, and I went
Mark
out with
Knopfler, yeah.
Dire Straits.
Yes.
I mean, I went out with all of them because when you're working with them, you're going out
Oh,
with
I
them.
see.
Yes.
Socially.
And so Di, once you started at Channel 10 and tell us how did you end up working in publicity? How did you kind of graduate through?
Right. So what happened was I became a DA, and I was a DA, director's assistant, for 13 years. And I actually worked with Wings because when Wings came out and they did a show at the Maya Music Bowl, I met Paul.
Who?
Wings was Paul
Oh,
McCartney's
Wings.
band.
Oh, yeah,
Great
Wings.
band. Met Linda McCartney.
Yeah.
I know who you thought.
I thought you said Winks.
So I was going to
Winks.
say you went out with a horse.
Yeah.
I went out with the horse, Wings. Oh, I love the
Yeah,
horses.
Wings.
Yeah, I was
Yep.
Love the horses.
Yes. Go on.
And working
And
with
so
Wings.
I just wanted to get out of what I was doing, and I wanted to move on. And Peter Feynman, I actually went to Channel 9 and said I want to work on the Don Lane show. That's what I wanted to work on. And I actually met Don at the Logies, at a Logies lunch, which was held at Ripon Lee. Can you believe it?
Oh, yeah.
And he really liked me, and I wasn't working, and he asked me out, and I went out with him a few times. That was interesting.
Now, so how did you go with him? How far did we get with Don? Did he sweep you into the boudoir and Don, please?
No, because he sort of wasn't like that, but I can't really tell you what he was like because it's secret.
Is it true, those stories that
All
they
of them.
said about... Is that true?
Yep.
You know the story I'm talking about?
Yes, we all know.
Where he's
Yeah.
squatted over a glass
Yeah, but he
table?
never did that with me.
No, anyway.
He was always a
weird.
gentleman with me. We used to watch it.
I didn't hear this story about the
Di, you ended
table,
up
John.
working
I
with
ended
Don.
up.
Tell me
Peter
about the table, John.
No.
Di, I want to hear about the
I
table.
wasn't there. I never saw it.
But tell us about working with Don, because that was
So-
when you were working not only with Don Lane, but you were working with Bert Newton.
I was working with
it-
Bert
and
and
that show
Peter
was
Feynman.
really the portal for
It was
celebrities coming into
It
Australia.
rated 33s every night. I went to on Monday and Thursday night and rated 33.
Really?
We were the cream of the crop at Channel 9.
You know what we rated on the footy show in the first, when it started? We rated 44s.
Well, you see, the
Go
people
ahead.
wanted it. The people wanted it. Anyway, I met a lot of people working on the Don Lane show, and I met all the producers and promoters and just made sure that I was, getting connected. And
So Don you went out with? You wouldn't have gone out with Bert because he was
no, he
ensconced
was
with
married.
Kathy, yes.
And you sort of don't go out with these people. It's like you don't really sort of go out for dinner, but you sort of go out for coffee and go to their homes.
Yeah.
It's more private.
Well, so Don, and you never met Graham. Did you meet Graham?
Yeah, I met Graham Kennedy in Sydney. That's going back a long way.
I'm
And John
probably the same
Mangan?
age as you.
Yeah,
I'm-
probably.
No, he's much older than you, Don.
I am?
I'm 74.
Oh, I'm 6. So
Well, there you go.
We grew up with Graham Kennedy and
Graham Kennedy was wonderful. And John Mangan, remember, I think he had a bit of a crush on John
John
Mangan.
Mango.
Mangan.
He did too.
Mangus.
No,
John
not
Mangan.
the artist.
And
the
they had that
artist.
great
the
show at
reporter.
night.
They had
It's
a
fabulous.
fantastic. Didn't have a rent, and he used to do it with my little Dickie Coombs, Graham Kennedy, my little Dickie.
Yeah. Graham
you
Kennedy
remember,
was
you
brilliant.
remember John Coombs? Yes, Don. He was.
Do I?
How old are you, Don?
He
You've
had
got
a
to be
crush
my
on you,
age.
and he had a crush on me.
Who did?
Yes.
He did.
John Coombs.
I could.
All these
not with it
people.
today.
So anyway, I was working with Don Lane, worked with Don Lane for years and years, and then I went to work for... Alan Finney asked me to go and work at Roadshow. So I went and worked in the advertising PR department at Village Roadshow. Met lots of people there. Sean Connery was one of them.
Alan Finney did the movie reporter
Yes, he
reviews on
did.
on a television
He did with
station.
Ivan Hutchinson, and he also was on Don Lane Show, and he was on with Bert when
And
Bert
he's trying
went
to
out
get
on-
up that film on that boy that had 3 heart.
Yes, he is,
called
I believe
My
you.
Journey. I can't
Yeah.
think of what its name. I know the man's father, the boy's father, who's
Yes.
since died. He had 3 heart transplants. They're trying to make a film
Yeah, I
about
remember.
him, and they struck a bit of trouble overseas where I think the film company purloined the funds and they've had to start again. But Alan Finney is a part of that.
Yes.
And I can't think of the man's name, and you'll be very
Michael.
disappointed I can't
Yes,
think of him.
I can't think of. I've met him. Michael,
It's
somebody.
some sort. It was called I can't think of its
I
name.
know I can't think
You'll
of
be
the name
annoyed
of it,
that
but I do
can't.
remember you meeting with Alan. Alan
Yes.
told me you met with him.
I did. He's a very nice man.
Yes, he's a lovely man. So then I worked with Alan Finney at Village Roadshow, which was fabulous because I was working in movie. So we'd bring people out and take them around Australia, and worked with Josh Brolin, who was very charming, and Sean Connery came out for Never Say Never Again. And
I think Robert De Niro was one of the ones who looked after.
Did he do a tour of us? Robert De Niro?
Robert De Niro came out for Raging Bull.
Pig.
And
he seems very rude
He's
on
a pig.
TV.
And we went out on
He's
a
an
cruise.
arsehole.
So you went on a cruise day?
Yeah, with him and his friend Harry Nilsson.
The singer,
He was quite nice to me. Yeah.
Who was?
Snilson
Niro.
Schmilson, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
Nilsson Schmilson.
The LP that he put out.
You know, Robert De Niro. I think he may possibly have become a little grumpier in his old age. I remember
When he was younger.
When he was younger, yes, he was quite spectacular. But when he
Oh,
was
yeah.
here doing a movie, he was actually shooting scenes for a movie called The Killer Elite, and these were pickup scenes that were being done down in Werribee. Not a bad film, but sort of surprising that he was involved in it. He was staying at Crown Casino, and everyone in the media was quite keen to try and get some form of interview with Robert De Niro while he was in town, and of course, as you would. And there was a press conference held in the Nobu restaurant, would you believe, at Crown, and all the press was called. And when we got there, we were told that we were only allowed to ask him questions about food. So and Nobu himself happened to be in town as well, and Robert De Niro is an investor
That's
in
right.
that particular restaurant chain.
In Tribeca.
So we had the most peculiar experience of everybody sitting for a press conference with one of the greatest movie stars of our time, and no one was allowed to actually ask him anything other than about sushi and
I know.
sashimi and, wasabi. It was
That's one
odd.
of the drawbacks, Di, of celebrities putting demands on what I
Yes.
interviewed Claudia Schiffer and wasn't allowed to ask her about the magician or
Yes,
what's his
that-
name?
David Copperfield.
David
I
Copperfield.
said, don't ask any. I said, why can't I ask? I didn't say that to her. I said, why can't I? So what could she not answer? She could say, I don't wish to answer that. But if you don't answer the question, people know that
Yeah.
you've been told not to ask it. I've never put any restrictions on anything that. It's extraordinary. It's a sign of weakness, cowardness.
It's extremely common these days, though, isn't it,
It's
Di?
a celebrity thing. Oh, yes. I mean, Juliet Prowse, who was in GI Blues with Elvis Presley, beautiful Juliet Prowse, gorgeous woman, came to the Don Lane show. And in those days, the guests used to come in the afternoon and you were able to have a pre-chat with them. And one of her things was don't ask questions about Elvis, and was like,
Well, it's like if Amber Heard wandered up the red carpet and she said, what about all that shit you said about, what's his name?
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp. She could say, I don't wish to speak about that. Don't say you can't ask me. Ask me anything you like.
I know, it's
what
crazy.
about that nonsense?
But it does have a lot of celebrity, it's a crazy world, isn't it, celebrity?
It is, and it's a different space these days because everybody's got their own publishing channels, and that being their social media, so they can control their message much more than they ever did in the past.
So,
Yeah.
Di,
And
did
that's
you look
what
at Sean Connery? Did you just look at him as James Bond? If ever there was
Yeah.
going to be anyone who could play James Bond in Dr. No, when it first came out, if that wasn't how James Bond should be imagined, I could not look at Sean Connery unless I remembered him as...
Yes, I agree. I did too. He was charming. He was absolutely charming. And he said to me, I was married. When I first met him, he said, I was married. My first wife's name was Diane. So, he was just charming.
And he I saw him interviewed. He said he knocked her around a bit. He said he
did.
He said he used to slap her around a bit.
I know.
I saw him admit that.
He admitted it. He thought that was, that was Scottish.
Bit of foreplay, bit of
it's a Scottish
get her up and about.
Apparently. But we went to dinner. We went to Florentino 3 times. And, when he was just a normal person, he wore a toupee, so he was totally bald.
Really?
Yep. He did in Bond. You can watch
Di,
it.
what's a publicist do? These people would be generating their own publicity by their mere, presence or
well, you sort of have
reputation?
You'd be called an influencer now.
Yeah. Well,
Or an enabler or an influencer.
I'm a bit. I'd like to
above that.
consider myself a bit better than an influencer. But anyway,
Tell me
being
what you did.
A publicist. Certainly with you've got to be responsible for getting all the interviews and making sure the message is out there about the movie, and that you just work.
So you're engaged by the film companies, in other words.
Got it. So you set up the schedule. You have to get it okayed by the principal artist, which is what they call principal person. And you have to be like, you're everything. You're like a mother, girlfriend. Because what happens is when you're with these people, you get to know them very quickly. You get to know their poison very quickly. If they want to go to church, they want to go to AA, what they drink, if they want the bar removed from the room. Yeah. All that sort of stuff. And so you're very privy to their life, to what they're about.
Did you line up all the press when celebrities came out? I interviewed Eartha Kitt. I was about 10th in line to interview Eartha Kitt, and she'd had a gutful of being interviewed.
Yes, I bet.
And they block off 2 hours to do interviews. And I was the 10th, and I was doing it for the Herald Sun, or the Sun in those days. And she was, when I got in there, might have been you, but
I didn't
the
work with
publicist said, you got 7 minutes, keep it short. And I said, all right, so I go and I thought, I'm not going to get an interview here, because some of the questions I asked were not like, what movies has she been in? And I had a baseball cap on. And I walked in and she was as grumpy as buggery. She was sitting there.
that was Shirley Bassey.
No, this is Eartha Kitt.
Eartha Kitt, she was gorgeous.
And I had the tape recorder. And I said, now when the tape recorder's on, we're on the record, madam, or whatever I call it. She said, get on with it. And I said, this will not last more than... So I said, my first question, and the editor of the Herald Sun said, you didn't ask her that, did you? I said, I did. I got on tape. I said, what criteria would I have to fulfil in order for you to go out with me? And she looked at me and I thought she was going to throw something at me, and she said, for a start, take that fucking cap off. And then she threw her head back and laughed, and I spoke to her for the woman, the publicist came in 3 times, said, you got to wind this up. I spoke to her for 35 minutes. And I asked...
Did you take her out?
I asked her. I asked her everything. And she said, I've never had an interview like this ever. I've got it on tape. I've got it on CD. And the boss of the Herald Sun, or the Sun, might have been Colin Duck, not sure if it was. He said, you didn't do that. And I said, and he played it. No, so
she's very sexy, isn't she?
Very sexy. But we got her out of a comfort zone, or into a comfort zone, and she'd been asked questions like, what do you think of Australia, and what is the movie about, and whatever she was doing here. So anyhow, that's what publicists do.
Yeah, that's what publicists do.
Keep you in line.
And when that situation happens where, the publicist says you've got 7 minutes, and the prince or the artists like Eartha Kitt want to keep going, they'll just keep going. And there's nothing you can do about it. You've just got to go with it. So it means your schedule's completely
some of the other memorable incidents that you've had, good or bad, Di, with celebs, because we love name droppers.
Yeah, Brian Ferry was a bit prickly. Yeah, he was a bit prickly, but he actually turned out to be okay in the end. He's very aristocratic, He was married to a Lady Lucy, and Jerry Hall.
Jerry Hall, wasn't he?
Yeah, very attractive.
Who, him or Jerry?
Him. Very handsome. He had a sore hand, and we took him to...
I think he's a graduate of the art school in London, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Mind you, Di.
Marvellous performer.
Mind you, I suppose, when you've sat on a plane for 36
Yes,
hours and you
and they
get out to a country you've never heard of and you're bombarded, I mean, I know that's no excuse, you're getting paid a shitload of money to do it, but sometimes if you are prickly, you get more prickly.
Yes, exactly. But I have to say, to his credit, I did ask him, I said, look, my sister's coming down from Sydney. She was a huge Roxy Music fan and she would love to meet you. Is that okay? And he said, yes, let's do it on the opening night at the after party. I'll meet her then. And I said, her name's Debbie. And he said, okay, right, Debbie. Now, I never mentioned it again. And he went on, he did all his media, did everything, did a great show at the Palais. And we had this wonderful party afterwards at the Palais. And he came up to me and he'd had a very sore hand. And what was really funny was we'd taken him to the doctors and everything. And then he arrived at the party, the after party, with this other hand bandaged. So he was a bit of a prima donna. Anyway, he walked straight up to me and said, "Where's Debbie?"
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So,
tell us
straight up to me.
Tell us, you then went on and you were working for Paul Dainty.
Yes,
and
I did after the John Lane show.
It was during that time that you worked with some of the biggest names in the world, including, tell us about the Rolling Stones and Michael Jackson.
Yeah, my first tour with Paul Dainty was Johnny Cash, and I was just thrown into the deep end, and you meet this incredible man, and you meet all these really tough managers from the States, and they really, you learn really on the run. And I went on the road with the Rolling Stones, which was amazing, and it's a full-on juggernaut, and you just enter a world of 5-star, 7-star. You just go into this, from just walking into the office, you go into this huge juggernaut of, they had a little school on the road, they had the kids on the road. Just an extraordinary experience. And Mick Jagger's just supreme. Totally evolved human being.
Smart as a whip.
Smart as a whip, knows all about the finances, questioned Keith about a $12 taxi fare that he made, and Keith was claiming the $12 back, and Mick said, "What's this?" And Keith said, "Oh, I left my jumper back in the hotel, mate, or what do they call them, sweater." Yeah. And he goes, "That's what we've got Taragos for, Keith. Don't go spending $12 on a taxi again." I thought, I love this guy.
So you bring back, I interviewed, I don't care saying it, I interviewed Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson when they're out here. So
yes, so that would have been me.
Yeah. I interviewed them.
Wasn't Johnny Cash extraordinary?
I've got a picture out there of me interviewing him. It was fantastic. Now, the requests.
Michael Jackson.
Yeah, Michael Jackson. Just requests. Did you get drugs? Were you?
Never.
Not you.
Oh.
Were you not you taking drugs? Did you?
No, I never got drugs.
No,
I always said
no, but
that.
they've never asked for unusual things to provide.
Never.
That was left to the
tour manager,
yes,
and the
tour
handler.
manager.
Well, I shouldn't say tour manager, but the handlers do all that.
Just tell me on a business point of view, it's often fascinated me, these guys, you mentioned Dainty, the bands that have to be paid or guaranteed before they left their country of origin.
Yes.
So excuse the expression, but they're putting their balls on the line, aren't they?
Absolutely.
The promoters, when they're hoping to sell X amount of tickets. How fine is that line?
It's very fine. And they know beforehand if they're going to lose their shirt, and it happens. But, like some of the bands get paid in gold bullion, so it's all paid, beforehand. I can't say too much because
So who did what promoter? Well, who lost their shirt over acts that didn't fire? Who lost it, but who didn't fire when they came out?
But it's not even a matter of firing. You can still sell, but it just doesn't. It depends on the deal that you've done with the band. Yeah. And if there's nothing sort of left for the promoter, I wouldn't say who lost out of loyalty to the promoters. I wouldn't say that.
No, but what artists didn't go over as well with the public as perhaps everyone thought they would?
Oh dear.
No, you don't know. Well, you do know.
Tell us one that really did go over well, and that's Michael Jackson.
Well,
I love this story, Sam, because it is a very unusual story. You worked with Michael Jackson.
Yeah, I worked with Michael Jackson. That was an extraordinary experience, meeting him and working with him, because he was clearly two different people. One of them was a very strict 38-year-old, like, let's do this and let's dance and let's fabulous. The other was this little boy who just wanted to open a Coke can and spray it all over you. But in Sydney, I got mistaken for his wife, Deborah Rowe. She was.
Didn't he marry a girl in Sydney?
Yeah, he married Deborah Rowe. She was a
Elton
surrogate.
John did the same, didn't he? Renata somebody.
Yeah, he married Renata, who's sound engineer.
But we interrupt on.
Sorry,
But
no,
Michael
she's bringing back little themes.
memories. We were at the Sheraton Hotel. It was a fabulous night. Newish Cole was there, Angela Bishop. It was a great night, Annie Habig. And there were rumours that Michael was going to get married after the show, and a celebrant had flown in from New Zealand. Anyway, Debbie was there. Debbie was very big and blonde. I was sort of big and blonde. We were sort of similar in a way. But anyway, they got married upstairs. Molly was there. He ran upstairs, and I think he did get in to the marriage. But the next day, and I'd been working with all the media, and they were hysterical. They were just anything to get a photo of Michael. And the next day, I walked out of the Sheraton Hotel with Paul Dainty, and the media went nuts and started filming me. And you're married, and how do you feel? And I'm going, David, it's Di, like the cameraman, you know. They were hysterical. They wouldn't have it that I was. And I went all over the world. I've got it all. I was on CNN.
Fantastic.
Molly got on the radio and said, thank God we've married her off at last.
Feds.
And, you know, Michael's really clever with marketing. And that day we were at the Opera House. And he came, when he was leaving the Sheraton, he came down the stairs and he tipped his hat at me, like...
Michael did?
Yeah, he was very charming.
Why did he marry that person?
Well, she was the mother of his children. She was the surrogate mother of his children. And
No, she's why would he marry? I see.
I think he married a lot of people. He married Lisa Marie.
He did too.
And he married, who else did he marry? No, he just married Lisa Marie.
did.
Apparently he really loved her. And also he was in love with Brooke Shields. And I mean, he was flirting on the tour. Like, he flirted with one of the guy's wives, Sue. And he said, Sue, you know, you can shoot down, because she was taking pictures. He said, you can shoot down in the mosh pit. And when all the Taragos would leave at the end of the night, I always remember the door opened and Michael grabbed Sue and pulled her into his van.
Wow. So I mean, he turned out to be a sort of a metrosexual, didn't he?
Oh, very much so.
What did he turn into be?
He
He
was
a non-binary. What was
yeah,
he?
I think you're right.
Non-binary.
I think he was non-binary.
He just lived in a different world, didn't he?
Totally different world.
tried
He
to make
stayed up
himself
all
look
night.
white.
Yeah, he wanted to be white like
Extraordinary.
Diana Ross. I mean, he wasn't very well. He wasn't a well man.
Wasn't he?
Oh, emotionally, no.
Oh.
He had been very damaged by his upbringing.
He had the doctor. He had a private doctor that used to give him the stuff that you have before you have.
Fentanyl.
Well, that's
when
what
you go
killed
have
him.
an operation, they give you the anaesthetic, and it makes you feel great for about 10 seconds till you. He used to give him that. He got put in jail for it.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
I think he was. I have my own theory about that. I think he
Go
was
ahead.
bumped off.
There was
Yeah.
all sorts of.
And just a minute.
Oh,
Di
I beg your
has-
pardon. Sorry.
Di has a theory.
He was very mysterious, Michael.
You
Charming.
think he was knocked off, you say? Did you say that?
Oh,
No.
yeah, but I mean, I'm just one little publicist.
Accidentally.
Oh, I don't want this to...
Well, Di, when you were working with him, that was back in the day when, you know, there were
no mobile phones.
no mobile phones, no social media, and you would go. Is it true that, you know, there used to be a request at midnight to go shopping at a toy store or something like that, and so shops would open or the zoo
shops
would open.
That sort of pretty much went on all his life. But in Perth, he wanted to go out and hire videos. And, you know, normally when we would go out and rent a video, we'd get 3, you know. Yeah. Oh, no, Michael had a huge trolley and he started off with cartoons. And
Did he? He was weird.
And then he went to Muhammad Ali. He was mad about Muhammad Ali. Look, he was fabulous. He was quite worldly and then quite naive. And he'd go from he morphed. I mean, I'm not kidding. This guy would go from being this little boy into this giant, good-looking man. And we went down the end of the video shop and then were all the classics there, the movie classics. And he went, oh, I love Lana Turner. He said, I love really big blonde women with big shoulders.
Well, you would have been in.
And I was just like, oh my God, this guy. I mean, he was magical. And when he was on stage, he was magical. He's the best entertainer I think I've ever
So we went
seen.
and all saw him at the MCG, which was a bit of a farce because unless you were in...
Yeah.
Well, I was in pretty good seats with the people.
Yeah.
Stephen Price went. He said he was sitting up in the back of Bay 13, which is about 150 metres away from him.
Yeah.
And by the time he'd walked off stage, the sound from his last song was just getting to him. Yeah.
I agree with you, Sam. I mean, I know that there's some fabulous shows coming through into the MCG in the next 12 months, but I just don't like it as a concert.
No, I
It's
don't
too
either.
big.
Like,
That's the
it's too
promoters,
vast.
just getting as many heads there to
Well, pretty
recoup
much.
the
They
money.
want to sell as many tickets as possible. And a lot of people wanted to go and see Michael Jackson. I'm glad I saw him.
I'm glad
and
I
I'm
saw
glad
him.
I saw David Bowie too, because he was something else.
In what way?
Oh, he was like, there was all these fabulous artists, and then there was David Bowie. He was unique. And he was also a very unique human being. I met him many
What
times.
do you call himself?
The
In
thin-
which phase? I mean, he was
what was
Ziggy
he?
Stardust.
Yeah,
he was the
that's
Thin
right.
White Duke.
Yeah,
he
the
was-
Thin White
Stardust,
Duke
yes,
and
that's
Ziggy
right, yeah.
Stardust. He was highly intellectual.
He lived in Sydney for a while, didn't he?
Yes, he did live in Sydney. Yes, he did.
Is that when he
In
went
Potts
out
Point.
back? Did a
He did the film clip.
in the outback at a hotel.
He did.
I forget the
Very famous China girl.
China girl.
And he fell
this-
in love with the China girl, the girl who was in the film clip. He fell in love with her, and that's why he stayed in Sydney. And I think she still lives there, or she's gone to New Zealand. But yeah, he was an extraordinary artist, like a true artist. And there was a party for his sound guy, and my sister and her husband came to the party. And my brother-in-law's a cricket nut, and real cricket tragic, and so is David Bowie. So they were talking cricket, and one of the very, very famous Australian cricketers who passed away just before our beautiful Shane did.
Rod Marsh?
Yeah, Rod Marsh. He was at the concert, and my brother-in-law said to David Bowie, "Oh, excuse me, Rod Marsh has just walked in."
Oh, that's fantastic.
It was one of those classic moments.
Now, Di, please, why did you say Michael Jackson you thought met an unnatural death?
Oh, look, I don't have evidence.
Well, what do you
I'm
say
a bit
that?
of a conspiracy
Do you think the
theorist.
doctor knocked him off? Or gave him an overdose of...
Well, he obviously did, didn't he?
Did he? Is that
Well, he
how
went to jail for that.
He
one's-
gave him to jail for prescribing him
all those terrible
unprescribable
drugs.
that made
I
him
don't
feel
know,
good.
and maybe I should take those words back.
No, you shouldn't.
Because
you
but
can't
it's just been
speak
my...
ill of the dead.
Oh,
You can't speak. It's not Michael. You can't.
I thought it was terrible when
No,
Michael
I didn't
died.
say you can't. You can't get into trouble for speaking about people who are not with us.
An opinion, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I've just always thought that it was incredibly suspicious. I mean, one minute he's rehearsals, and the next minute he's dead. Like, it was like Diana,
Yeah.
Like, what? What went there on there?
Well, that's
You'd be a very busy lady at 74 still. You're still doing your promotional
Oh,
work
yeah.
and also writing a column on Sunday mornings. You probably don't, fingers in the Herald Sun, you'd be the unnamed source, wouldn't you?
That's a very interesting question.
Well, are you going to elaborate?
Well, actually, Di's got. I will say, I am doing a story on one of Di's clients in the paper for this weekend.
So we don't just fill up our column each week with Di stories.
Well, sometimes, you can't help being an unnamed source. And sometimes you are just privy to wonderful, juicy stuff. I've worked with Rod Stewart, I've got to tell you this. And Rod Stewart, they were staying at the Park Hyatt, that lovely hotel around near the Parliament House, and his lovely girlfriend. And anyway, Paul, my lovely ex-boss, Paul Dainty, I don't think you'll mind me telling the story, came up to me and said, "Now, no photos. We don't want any photos of Rod." Anyway, I said, "Absolutely." And the Herald Sun was standing outside. Anyway, Paul went away and got into the lift, and Rod came over to me and went, "Now, you don't know this, but Penny and I are going to walk around the corner and we're going to sit in the front window and you can tell that photographer to come around."
fantastic.
Great stuff.
You and
It
I
is.
actually worked together on when I took a
Elton
little
John.
break from the Herald Sun for 4 years, and during that time I did lots of different jobs, and one of them was I worked with Di on the Deniliquin Blues and Roots Festival.
Hang on, the Deniliquin, the Ute Muster.
No, not the Ute Muster. It was the Blues and Roots Festival. So there was a couple of years there where they were trying to get, I guess, a Deniliquin version of what happens up at Byron Bay, and it was terrific.
Oh, God,
so,
it was good.
And we found ourselves out, and it's at the same site as the
Ute
Muster.
Muster.
And it was terrific. Anyway, we found ourselves out in the middle of this vast flat paddock with Status Quo and
Really?
Carlos Santana. Who else was on that bill?
That funny man. Beautiful voice.
How'd you get the
Chris Isaac.
Chris
who was
Isaac.
there,
God,
yeah.
you made
Bonnie
me laugh.
Raitt was
Remember he had
there.
all the different
Jesus
colours.
Christ.
It was incredible. But the strangest thing was the kangaroo. Do you remember the kangaroo?
Yes, I do remember the kangaroo very well.
Well,
Suddenly all of a
Carlos
sudden...
Santana, and it was bizarre because he was driving with his band from Melbourne to Deniliquin for the show.
It's incredible.
Everyone else was either flying in or whatever, blah, blah, they were all there. I think 28 minutes before he was due on
Yeah.
stage, he still wasn't there. And
No, he wasn't. Bonnie Raitt was
there was, everyone was having a slight conniption about
We all
it.
kept saying, where is he?
Where is he? And, there'd be a phone call to the Tarago, and it's like, no, the Tarago's on the way. They're on the way. They're at wherever. It was extraordinary. And then this little Tarago comes wheeling into the back of the stage area and parks. The door sort of slides open. Carlos Santana just gets out, wanders over, and everyone is just like, you're literally on stage in 15 minutes.
Yes.
What do
I
we
think
need
it
to
was
put the
even
show
less
back?
than
And
that.
he was like,
Yes.
no, and then went and sat in his dressing room,
tent. That's right,
meditated
he
for 10 minutes, and then just walked out and did the most incredible sunset set I have ever seen in my life.
It was incredible.
And,
Yeah, it was
and
incredible.
what's the kangaroo bit?
Well, the kangaroo ended up... I just remembered I wanted to throw the kangaroo away somewhere and hide it because it was causing so many problems.
Well,
that woman turned up with the kangaroo.
a woman turned up
and said that we could give it to Carlos Santana.
Yes, so a woman
A
turned...
kangaroo.
Yes, with a kangaroo.
Yeah.
So a woman turned up at the side of the stage. While, mind you, Carlos Santana was in his Tarago somewhere between, Rochford and Deniliquin at this point. And Di had to meet this lady. The security called and said, look, there's a lady here. Could you come and help her? And Di went over and was talking to her, and she's saying, I'm allowed to, meet Carlos Santana, blah, 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 blah. And I remember, Di, I was with you, and you're like, really? Okay. And why? And she said, I have a gift for him.
That's right.
And Di's like, a gift. Could you tell me what the gift is? And she was holding this wrapped up bundle in her arms, and she pulled away the blanket, and in her arms was a baby kangaroo that she had brought to gift to Carlos Santana backstage at this show.
Fantastic.
And your reaction, I'll never forget it. You're like, oh, it's so wonderful. I just don't think we can give him a kangaroo.
Did he get to see
I
it?
don't think he did. No, you can't just sort of give... I mean, he would have had a disease or something, that little
That's
kangaroo.
right,
I
yeah.
didn't want him to go
But
anywhere.
it was one of those bizarre things.
But people do the weirdest things to meet people. People would say, I've got 3 days to live. I mean, I'll tell you, Michael Jackson, God love him, he met so many sick children, I went to the hospital with him in Adelaide. And the doctors were crying. I mean, he was extraordinary.
Now,
So those events or things that they do, they don't receive the publicity.
No, not all of them don't. No, they're private.
So, Di,
Because they know their power. They're healers, those people.
who are the harder to deal with, the men or the women that you had to oversee generally?
Oh, the men are easy because you can sort of...
They flirt.
Well, they flirt, and if they're difficult, you just... Like Brian Ferry, it's a bit difficult, and you just have to be very firm.
And they don't want to argue with you because you're a
No,
woman.
because I'm a woman. And the women are okay. I've never had any problem with any women.
Who are the biggest
They
women
like a
stars?
drink. the women I remember like a drink, and some of the stars drink out of the bottle, which always horrified me.
Who are the biggest women's stars that you...
Oh, I worked with Rita Coolidge. She was pretty amazing. I've worked with Nana Muscuri about 4 times. She's fabulous. Oh, my God. She's fabulous.
Was she
Nana
only big in
Muscuri.
Melbourne because of the Greek community?
No, Nana Muscuri is big everywhere. Nana Muscuri was very, very famous.
Who was the man she was on with out here?
She wasn't on with anyone out here, but she
I
think she...
she was married to a much older man.
She was...
Fred Hardy. No, Frank Hardy.
Frank Hardy.
That's it.
She was
Well
on
done.
with... You're absolutely
Thank you.
right.
Yes.
But
She-
every night after the show, she was staying at the Hilton. We would go back. I'm sure she won't mind me telling that story. And we would have chips and red wine. God, I could never do that. Although I think we just did that recently with Charlie Sheehan, didn't we? But anyway, she sat there and we're having a few red wines. And I was talking about how I love Bob Dylan. She said, oh, I went out with Bob Dylan. I said, oh, my God, did you? She said, oh, I was mad about him, you know. And it's wonderful when they start opening up about their lives.
What did she... Go on.
And Lauren Bacall met
Oh, wow.
Tom Petty at Molly's house at a party, and that started up a bit
Lauren
of a...
Bacall.
And she was
Wow.
Much
beautiful.
older than Tom Petty.
Yeah, but it's okay to go out with younger men, you know?
What-
You've got
Well,
to-
is that
these
how you
guys.
justify what you do?
Yes. Every
Frank
time.
Hardy, how would she have got to be in the company of Frank Hardy, most diverse and completely
politics, very left in their politics. She's very involved in politics. Her
she?
political leanings are very left. You
We
wouldn't
won't
agree
start
with
to
her.
talk about politics, Di.
No, let's not talk about
no.
that.
Frank Hardy, I remember his great line in Power Without Glory when he was talking about the imbecile that walked up to him. He said, he cocked his head to one side in a ridiculous endeavour to lend intelligence to a face that bore distinct signs of imbecility.
You're marvellous.
I know,
That's
I've just remembered.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, the night of her concert in Melbourne, all the Hardy family came. Marieka came.
Yeah.
And it was lovely. And there was great warmth with the family. They all love her very much. She's a wonderful woman, Nana Muscuri.
Now, the one star that you wouldn't have met, which you would have probably been the epitome of your career, because the Colonel wasn't allowed to go out of the States,
That's
and therefore
right.
Elvis didn't travel overseas. That's the only, that film tells us that. The only reason that he
Yeah.
couldn't travel overseas to Europe anyway, because the Colonel wasn't a naturalised citizen and he wouldn't have been allowed back
and
in the
didn't
country.
have a passport.
But yeah, you would have loved to have been in the company of Elvis.
Love to have met Elvis. Love to have met Elvis. He is without a doubt.
Without a doubt, the number
The
one.
number
you can
one.
Put
He's the
Michael
king.
Jackson, do Frank Sinatra, any of them.
Frank
He's head and
Sinatra,
shoulders.
divine. I agree with you about Elvis Presley. He had that unbridled sexuality which just got you every time, and still does. And I worked with Priscilla a couple of years ago, and she just speaks about him so beautifully that you think he's going to walk in the room. Like, she just really loves him.
What's the star? I call him a star. The bloke who, Cage, he married, didn't he marry Priscilla?
Nicholas, yeah. And
Nicholas
Nicholas was
Cage.
a big Elvis Presley fan.
Big,
yeah.
and that's why he married. He thought, oh, I'm going to
Yeah.
marry something to do with the genes
Yeah.
of the
And I think-
family clan, and he married her.
And I think Michael probably did the same thing with Priscilla too, because they were so sort of misunderstood a bit. They came from quite similar sort of backgrounds.
Di, you must have spent many, many nights in at the footy show. And
Yes, I did. I
think
love the footy show.
I think it just might be nice to think back on some of Sam your moments. What was it like entering that world of the footy show in its peak?
Well, I still am very enamoured about football and footballers. I find footballers most interesting because I think football is theatre, pure theatre. So to walk into the footy show was just an incredible experience and see it all happening and see you with all your antics.
I don't think you were very enamoured with me, though, Di. You said some. Not pleasant things about me, which that's
No, I
fine.
didn't.
Yeah. No, I was told you did.
Oh,
Oh, hang on.
Di.
what did you do,
Di.
Sam?
Told
Di, please, this is not...
Who do you know?
I'm a great fan of yours, and I don't care what you say about me. But people used to tell me that. And
They're not talking about the same person.
But I could easily say that about anyone.
I think we're like
Sam,
two different people.
That's right, and you could say, no, I could say to Don, I'm a good friend of Don,
Oh,
but I could say, no, he's a bloody buffoon,
Yes,
some of the
exactly.
shit that he carries on with. And that's what I was told, that's what he said about me, but plenty of people say that about me, my friends. And
Yes, but-
so I'm not.
But I've always thought that you're a gentle giant, and I think that you're very different off camera than you were on that show.
Yeah, of course.
And
I
you
hope
wanted
so.
you wanted to rile us all women
Yes.
up, like Caroline, and I used to get so angry with you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
that's absolutely fair comment, and
Yeah.
that's how it is. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
No.
But I was just...
You're passing on a message. Yes, I
wasn't passing
probably
on a
have said a
message.
few terrible
Yeah.
things
Is
about you.
PR, Di, is PR
Just to
a
pride me.
female or male bastion? Because I don't know of too many men
No, there
that do
aren't.
PR or get their name out as PR agents.
Yeah, I think women do a very good job at PR because you've got to have that. You've got to have that eyes in your back of your eyes thing. You've got to have that instinct and empathy that a lot of men don't have.
Yes.
And you've got to be able to read the plays. You've got to be able to go.
Because you're a woman and they're men, and you've got to think on a different basis to
Yeah,
what men
you
would
do.
think about men.
Yeah.
And women, there's that certain physical thing
Yeah,
that
and
you
you can
have
just
with
say,
whoever
look,
you're dealing
you-
with.
Yeah, I work with
really
Roger.
believe that.
I work with Roger Daltrey and Patrick Swayze,
Yeah.
and they were both in a bit of a bad way one day. They didn't want to work, they didn't want to go to the radio station, fair enough. And you've got to be able to say,
Come
look,
on.
come on,
Yeah.
you have an agreement to do this. You signed a piece of paper. Come on, just
And-
do it for me.
And would they...
Yeah, they'll be
Would they,
fine.
they would come out, and then they'd probably, like the woman that I went to see, she cancelled after she said she was smoking cigars.
Whitney
at the
Houston.
Whitney
Oh,
Houston.
God.
So they come out here and they think they're away from everything on the
Yeah.
antipodes, and they get into the drugs and the grog, and they
Yeah.
get complacent. And
Oh, shocking. And it's all there. That's what's so hard, like it's all there, everything.
sorry, I don't know what that's an alarm on a clock. I'm sorry,
Oh.
ignore it. Yep.
But poor Whitney, she ended up a bit sad. I'm actually working with a girl at the moment who's doing a show at Palms at Crown on the 15th of July, and she's doing a celebration of Whitney Houston, if you'd all like to come.
What's her name?
Her name's Talani, and she was actually on Studio 10 this morning up in Sydney, which is really lovely. But yeah, you've just got to read the play. You've got to say, are you sure you're okay? Like, is there something going on? You can tell me. I think I even did that with David Bowie once. Yeah. And he said, I'm having that beautiful accent. He was having romantic problems.
I see, yeah.
And you just go, oh, that's terrible. Oh, okay. Well, look, let's make a cup of tea. And you just get to know how they have their tea, how they have their coffee, what they like to drink.
Well-
and they give you magic words to say, like Cliff Richard. So Cliff Richard, we went to the races, I think, and David Cassidy did the same thing. When I say oysters, Cliff Richard said, when I say oysters, it means I want to go, like immediately.
Really?
Yeah. And I think David Cassidy used a similar thing with me, I remember, but he said, I'm going to tell you a word. So I do it sometimes. When I say Alice Cooper, I always say, when I say Alice Cooper, I want to leave.
Your secret code.
That's that old line, if you're going out with a girl for the first time and it's not going well, you get someone to ring you.
Oh.
You say, what? An accident at home? I've got to come now.
The curtains.
Really? And then you say to the person you're with, I'm sorry, look, I've got a family thing I've got to rush away from. That's how you get out of a date, Don.
Sam, let me tell you, it's not just guys that do that. We do that as
No,
well.
that's too bad.
No, I'm sure.
And I run into the loo and set my alarm because I'm so bored, and I just, my alarm, my God, I forgot I've got a Zoom call to London. I have to go. Lovely dinner.
I was just looking up Cliff Richard's, because no one knows this.
Sir Cliff Richard,
No,
yeah.
I was looking up his real name. His name's Harry Roger Webb.
Yes.
And he called himself Cliff Richard because he liked Little Richard.
That's right.
And he liked the outdoors, and he said he'd like to be on a cliff. I heard him this on his doco.
He's
He
so
said,
funny.
so I called myself Cliff Richard in honour of being an outdoors man. And Well, when I say man, the police came into his
Yes.
apartment in
Barcelona.
Britain,
Yeah, in Britain.
because they thought he was into young boys. And he said, I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but he said when they raided his house to look for paraphernalia or DVDs or whatever, he never went back or lived in the house.
No, he
ever
never
again.
went back to the house.
He sold it and never went back
he never
in
went
it
back
again.
there. He went to Barcelona and he
He
bought
did.
another house. He's
But
quite
he
a
is an
beautiful.
enigma, isn't
He
he?
is. He was
He's
beautiful.
quite
He was
a
fantastic.
beautiful man.
He was.
Yeah,
He is.
very gentle.
Yeah.
I liked him very much. He was my favourite.
Well, look.
We could talk forever.
Well, Sam, we
Well,
could talk
I tell you
forever.
what, we
but
could. This is.
Wasn't
We have
this
only
great?
had. We've had a couple of people back twice in the 2 years we've been doing this.
Yeah.
One of them, Don, you wanted to get Salvatore. What's her name? The Miss World, Nude World. What's her name?
Isabella Del Toro.
Isabella Del
What was
Toro.
that?
We had
she's
Miss Nude
beautiful.
World
Isabel.
in here.
Yes, she's
She-
beautiful.
and honestly, she was extraordinary. So we haven't had her back twice, but we would love to have, and you could have to come in and do it again.
Sam, I would be honoured.
That'd be great.
Yeah, hang on. This is just Janet's. Oh,
Janet
I'll ask you.
Smoot.
I'll ask you off here. Janet Smoot.
Yeah,
it's
Janet
amazing
Smoot.
when you
Start
names come
thinking
back to you.
back.
Like Carol Gunnell's name came up. Janet Smoot. There's
Lives
another
in
name.
Dubbo.
She's
She's
in
married to a
Dubbo.
milkman. Yeah, she married a milkman.
Janet
Talk to you
Smooth.
off air.
See, it's
no,
really
no, no.
funny.
This is just comes back to you people when you went to school
Yeah.
with what happened to so and so, and then a name came. Oh, I've got to know.
Is this part of the interview?
No, it's not.
not
We're going to
really.
do this off air because it's
But
boring
it's really
stuff.
fascinating because what I really like about what I do is I really wanted to do this. This is like my hobby, and this is an extension of the Beatles fan club. Celebrity fascinates me. Harry Styles absolutely fascinates me. Have you seen the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that go and see him? But he's really clever because he markets himself to women and men and the transgender guys. Very clever. Celebrity's fabulous. So going back to the footy show, that's why I loved going to the footy show and I'd see Gary Lyon in the flesh. And,
James Brayshaw.
yeah. And,
No, he's a fantastic bloke, James
yes, I
Brayshaw.
believe he's lovely. Somebody told me the other day that he was really nice.
He's aloof.
I had a bit of a crush
He's
on
good.
Gary Lyon for a while.
And of course, the star of the show,
Sam.
always you, Sam.
And Eddie, who's so smart.
As smart
So
as
clever.
Eve, so smart. You talk about
So
Mick Jagger
clever.
being smart.
Oh,
Yeah, we could talk for a whole. Do you ever have any women hit on you?
all the time.
Do you? The
Yeah, I
celebs?
worked with, famous women. Yeah,
Yeah.
I worked with Katie Lang, who I loved.
Yes.
And
She
she
said
didn't hit
die.
on me, but we did laugh.
Did
and
you?
she said, "Oh, I don't go out with men. They're just too hard. They're too difficult. Have them as friends. Go out with women.
I
It'd be
tend
much."
to agree with them. Yep, and who
Yeah,
else?
men are difficult, and even as you get older, men.
Yep, no.
Very difficult.
What's wrong with men?
Oh, there's so many narcissists out there, and they just lead you up the gut, and they lie. Men lie so much.
Hence that
No, but
great
you
book,
attract those
Di.
type of men.
That
Di.
great book, Men Are From Mars.
Yeah, it's a great
if
book.
there's ever been a more correct statement in the world that men are liars and women are schemers, I don't know what it is. That is as good
Yeah,
as
I think you're right. Because look at, I know we're not supposed to talk about it, but I just want to say how sad I'm feeling for Nick Kyrgios. I'm a big fan,
So am I.
and I have followed his tennis for many, many years, and I just think women do terrible things sometimes to men.
Well, and we tend, and they do, and we, Don, as men
Men
if
are
you say
liars
that,
and
we
women are
become
schemers.
branded automatically as sexist. But we should not believe this Me Too stuff just went overboard. And there's plenty of women lie, plenty of women scheme. Men lie, but women scheme. If Amber Heard and that
Yeah.
Blasey Ford thing that's politics. And that unfortunate
It's,
story coming out now about Nick Kyrgios being
Yeah,
involved.
Can't
there's
really
obviously
talk about
police
it.
charges involved in
No,
that.
but
But
I'm just saying, how come that it comes out
And the
now?
timing
and
of it is
the
terrible.
timing of it.
Anyway,
And I love Nick Kyrgios. I'm not sure that he should spit at people in the crowd, but he'd be smart enough not to make the spittle hit the people in the crowd, wouldn't he?
oh yes,
Yep.
he's no fool. Everything
Did you
he'd
see,
done.
if you're into tennis, did you watch the match between, going back a few years, Kyrgios and a guy from Germany, a dark guy with dreadlocks?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
I would have watched it.
Dustin somebody. I think, jeez, it was an unbelievable. He was as good as mercurial as Kyrgios was playing. This is going back about 2000.
I think Kyrgios is playing great tennis.
Oh,
Well, what I think is at this point, I'm going to put a stop here because, Don, if we want to talk about tennis, we maybe can do another chapter on sport. But for this moment, I think I'm going to say, Sam, thank you for a fabulous conversation with
Fantastic,
Di. I have
Di.
loved having you here, Di.
Thank you, Fiona.
Telling
and
some
Sam.
amazing stories
Yeah.
about some amazing people. And Sam and Don, to hear
Yes.
Most
your
interesting
experiences.
It was fantastic, Di. Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you.
So this is how we end. We end with Daddy Cool.